Hello, Yanines. Hope you're all well and staying safe. Today, we're going to be talking about the threats to biodiversity. But before we begin the discussion, please pause the video and answer these six starter questions. Please pause. What is biodiversity? Biodiversity is a measure of the different species that live in an ecosystem. What is the name of the sampling square used in ecology fieldwork? The sampling square specifically is called the quadrat and it has an area of roughly about 0.25 meters squared. What is used for estimating the number of plants? Of course, if we're talking about ecology, again, it's a quadrat that is used to estimate the number of plants. Name another sampling method used in ecology fieldwork. The sampling method used is a transect. Hope you guys had time to research both the quadrat and the transect, how they're done. When things return to normal, we'll do them again in school in the car park area. How is energy in food chain lost? Energy in the food chain is lost by two processes, respiration and heat. So the food you eat, part of it is converted to glucose. That glucose reacts with the oxygen you breathe in, and the glucose and the oxygen reacts to make carbon dioxide plus water, and energy is released. Now, the energy that is released, part of it is used for body movement, muscle contraction, and also part of it is used to keep our bodies warm. So, energy in food chain is lost through respiration and heat. What happens to the biomass at each stage in a food chain? The biomass decreases as you move from a lower trophic level to a higher trophic level. Okay, we're moving on. We want to look at threats to biodiversity. Now, I've placed a hippo at the bottom because we're going to use the acronym HIPPO to help us remember the five major threats to high biodiversity. The first one is habitat loss. Habitat loss is normally done through deforestation, cutting down trees. That's what deforestation means. Okay, and we can do that for several reasons, either for farming, to clear the land for farming, building houses, building roads, or for some other purposes. Also, invasive species, which I know Mr. Shannon had dealt with a bit. Population increase, of course, the world population is currently increasing at an exponential rate. So, more land is needed for building houses. More land is needed for growing food so that we can meet the demand for food. There is food security. Food security is another topic we're going to be looking at. And more land is needed for waste disposal. Can you pause for a moment and ask yourself a question? Every week, the bin lorry comes around and takes your rubbish away. Have you ever asked yourself where they deposit all that rubbish? And it happens for the whole of the UK every week. We have what we call landfill sites where those are dumped. And for that to happen, they have to clear a forest, clear an area, dig a hole, and put all our rubbish. And that is a problem. It destroys the biodiversity. And we have pollution, water pollution, land pollution, and air pollution. Land pollution, we'll look at that again. We'll talk a bit more about that later. Air pollution is basically burning of fossil fuels. That's why we're talking about using renewable sources of energy rather than non-renewable sources of energy, because the non-renewable sources like fossil fuel, especially fossil fuel, they produce what we call carbon dioxide, which are greenhouse gases, and they contribute to greenhouse effect leading to global warming. And finally, we have overexploitation. We have overfishing, which means all the baby fishes are caught, therefore they are not even allowed to go to adulthood and reproduce, so the fish stocks go low. Overhunting, you know what's happening, especially in some of the African savanna reserve or African safari parks. Um, Certain animals are being hunted for their tusk, ivory, and so overhunting, they're being hunted to extinction. We'll be looking at that again. So if you notice these 5 points, they all start with a letter from hippo. habitat loss H, invasive species I, P for population increase, another P for pollution, and over exploitation. Okay, let's look at water pollution. So you can see the four key sources of water pollution. We have untreated sewage. You can see from the bottom left picture, this is the sewage pipe taking all our rubbish into the things we flush down the toilet, down our bathroom, down our sinks. They all make their way to the sea again. Now, if it's untreated, it goes directly into the sea. It pollutes that. We have fertilizers. This comes from farms. When it rains, it drains off the farm, gets into the water table, or makes its way down to the sea. Again, that is pollution. Industrial waste, if they are not treated before disposed of, it can cause problem. In this top right hand corner picture, this is an oil spillage, and you can see a turtle covered in oil. And then we have pesticides and herbicides, and some of our household waste. They are just deposited like this in some countries, which all of this cause pollution. It looks so unsightly. Right. So when we talk about toxic materials in the food chain, we talk about microplastics. I know Sky News is currently doing a lot about plastics in the ocean. Please research that. And then we have mercury, which are found in insecticides and in some special paints. Special paints they use to paint vessels at sea, ships at sea, and that paint seeps into the water that can affect the marine life. DDT was used as insecticides or used in insecticides before, and that as well can affect marine life because insecticides are used on farms for insects and pests that are destroying crops. So they use these insecticides to kill them so that they can preserve the crops and the crops not die. PCBs were used in electric circuit boards, on capacitors, transformers. PCBs are very good. They have a high resistance to extreme temperatures and they are used as coolant fluids. So, bioaccumulation, we talked about that in year 8, occurs when toxic materials build up in an organism. But we're going to learn about another term called biomagnification, that is increase of toxins in the food chain. So you have a buildup in a symbol in an organism as opposed to buildup in the food chain. Now, this is an example of what biomagnification is. So the algae has a few of the toxic material in it. The shrimp eats a lot of the algae, so the buildup in the shrimps. The cod eats more shrimps, so more buildup of the toxic material in the cod. The toxic material doesn't go away, it doesn't dissolve. Now the seal eats a lot of fishes, therefore more toxic material build up in the seal. And as it gets to the polar bear eats quite a number of the seals, so more toxic materials in the polar bear. So that's what happens in the food chain with the toxic materials. Okay, we've talked about this. I'm only displaying the side so you can see more effect of that. We talked about the phytoplankton. These are plants, and the zooplanktons are animals that live on the plant. So the zooplanktons are herbivore. So phyto the zooplankton eats the phytoplankton. The herring eats the zooplankton, so more buildup in the herring. So by the time it gets to the orca whales, there is a massive buildup of the toxic, in this case PCBs, in the orca whales. Orca whales, by the way, are as large as buses. Please check that on YouTube or Google. Now, here is what happens with the plastic we take into the ocean. The plastic breaks down, it doesn't decompose, it only breaks down into smaller pieces, what we call microplastic. The fish may eat it and it may end up on our plates. So be careful of how you dispose of your plastics. Now, 3 students have done a research about pollutants. The first student is called Macy. Macy's research on DDT, and I read that for you. DDT was an insecticide that was used to kill insect pests that damaged crops. DDT entered food chains. It was passed along the food chains from one level to the next when feeding occurred. It did not affect every animal in the food chain. One animal that was affected was the peregrine falcons. However, it did not kill them. It caused the shells of their eggs to become too thin. This meant that the eggs broke easily and the chicks died, and as a result, the number of peregrine falcons fell. Please note what happened to the peregrine falcon when DDT entered their food chain. Their eggshells became too thin. That is a quiz question. When is research on PCBs? PCBs are chemicals that have been found in high levels in killer whales. The levels of PCBs can get high enough to kill the whales. The PCBs have also been found in the milk of female killer whales. This means the PCBs are passed on to the calves but at lower levels. Calves are much smaller than adult killer whales, but the amount of PCB that is dangerous to a calf is lower than the amount that kills adults. As a result, calves can also die. Feel free to pause the video and read it all by yourself. Jensen's research on polluted rivers. How polluted a river is can be determined by the species found in the river. Some species are very tolerant to high levels of pollutants, whilst others must live in clean water. If the water is polluted, they will die. So if you look here, the level of water pollution, none means it's a clean water, and these are what we have: mayfly nymph, stonefly nymph. However, if the water is highly polluted, we have sludge worm, red tail maggots. Those are the things that live in a highly polluted water. I can leave this for you. Please pause the video and read it yourself and study it. Now, pause the video, discuss with your family, and answer these questions. I'll display the answers now. Hope you had this correct. Biodiversity is significantly reduced when land is cleared for human uses such as building, quarrying, farming, and waste disposal. And the way we clear the land is by deforestation, chopping down of trees, cutting the trees, or sometimes bushfires. So, this is a bit of statistics for you to read, but I want to focus. You can pause the slide to read all of this, but I want to focus on the last paragraph. It says deforestation destroys the habitats of the organisms that live there, and through this kills individuals of many species. Hence, deforestation is causing extinctions and dramatically reducing biodiversity. A quiz question is going to come from this. Please study that last paragraph. Right, here we go. We're talking about bushfires. Forest or bush fires like the one in the picture can be started deliberately or accidentally by humans, or they can be a result of a natural cause such as lightning. The speed at which the fire spreads depends on factors such as the wind speed, air humidity, and the moisture content of the vegetation. Fire breaks are an example of a human solution designed to prevent forest fires spreading. A fire break is a gap in the vegetation. So a fire break can be a road going through vegetation or a forest. That can be a fire break. You can research more about fire breaks. So study what is written there. Here you have some questions to discuss with your family. I have deliberately not put in answers for questions like these because I don't want to influence your personal opinion, but I'm asking you to think responsibly and think about future generations. If we continue to live recklessly now, future generations will not have resources to live. Think about this, the positives, the negatives, and come up with your own answers. Okay, here's another story for you to read about orangutans. Their forest basically is being cleared to plant palm trees because we need the palm oil from the palm kernel, and as palm oil is used worldwide. Right. So some students talk about sustainability and the use of palm oil. Talia says, if using palm oil is so bad, then why don't government just ban the use of it? there would not be a market for it and deforestation will stop. Dylan says, not all products that contain palm oil are bad. Some products only use palm oil from sustainable sources. You should check the labels of the products before you buy them. Ketlon says, it is the consumer who drives the demand for the product. If we stop using products containing palm oil, then less trees will be needed and no more plantations will be made. Harley says, it's not my responsibility. I can't do anything to help. If I stop using palm oil, it won't make any difference, so I'm going to continue using it. Please feel free to pause the video and read over the statements again, all by yourself. Here are some questions for you to go through. Again, I have not displayed any answer. It's based on your personal opinion. But please think about protecting the environment when discussing this. Here are 7 questions for you to answer. Please note these questions and their answers. You're going to come up, you're going to find them again in the quiz. Please pause and answer. Okay, here are the answers to those questions. Study them. And once you've completed these, please move on to completing the quiz. Thank you.